The United States Navy is currently engaged in its most intense maritime combat since the end of the Second World War. Entire strike groups are deployed, burning through resources day and night, all to guard a single, incredibly small stretch of water. This is the Bab-el-Mandeb Strait. At its absolute narrowest point, the distance separating the shores is barely 18 miles wide. Yet every single day, 10% of all global trade and over 7 million barrels of petroleum are squeezed through this tiny geographic needle eye. Because it is bordered closely by the rocky coastlines of Yemen to the east and Djibouti to the west, ships have zero room to maneuver. It acts as a perfectly exposed, inescapable trap for slow-moving commercial freighters. The layout of the Gate of Tears exposes exactly how fragile the entire modern global supply chain really is. When this 18-mile corridor becomes impassable, commercial fleets have to make a drastic choice. They are forced to abandon the Suez Canal entirely, pulling their highly vulnerable container ships out of these narrow transit routes. Instead of cutting through the Middle East to reach Europe, those fleets must now take a massive detour around the entire continent of Africa. Navigating around the Cape of Good Hope adds thousands of miles of vast, isolated ocean to the journey. This animated chart breaks down the cost. The blue line tracks standard transit costs, but the red line demonstrates the violent, exponential spike caused by the Cape route, adding weeks to delivery times and burning millions in extra fuel. Those massive shipping losses do not stay at sea. The extra fuel and delayed cargo costs are quickly passed down the supply chain, inflating the price of items sitting on store shelves. The maritime crisis becomes a silent, direct inflation tax paid by the average consumer at the grocery store and the gas pump. To stop this economic bleeding, the U.S. Navy has deployed massive, multi-million-dollar warships to patrol the region. But this introduces the brutal logic of asymmetric warfare. In this type of conflict, one side uses low-cost tactics to exploit the vulnerabilities of a larger, technologically superior force, turning the superpower's advanced engineering into a financial liability. To clear the skies of incoming threats, the United States relies on sophisticated interceptor missiles. Each time one of these weapons is fired from a vertical launch system, it costs American taxpayers roughly $2 million. In contrast, the enemy forces are deploying swarms of extremely basic, rudimentary drones. Built from cheap, readily available parts, these disposable weapons cost as little as $2,000 to manufacture. The math here is punishing. Spending $2 million to shoot down a $2,000 target creates a completely inverted cost curve, heavily draining the defense budget with every successful interception. The United States may be successfully clearing the skies and winning individual firefights, but they are steadily losing the overarching economic war of attrition. Between the localized supply chain disruptions and the upside-down military expenditures, the established methods of projecting global power are breaking down. For decades, military strategists assumed that cutting off global maritime trade would require a massive, multi-billion-dollar naval fleet. The reality today is much cheaper. Adversaries only need geographic proximity to a vital shipping lane and a steady supply of low-cost, off-the-shelf technology. With just a handful of crude drones and short-range missiles, significantly smaller and underfunded groups can now inflict billions of dollars in economic damage and effectively hold global commerce hostage indefinitely. The Bab-el-Mandeb Strait has become the definitive proving ground for this modern tactic. It proves that brute force and expensive traditional warships are no longer enough to secure the arteries of global trade.